Greetings, everybody. Welcome to the August 31st, 2016 edition of the Midweek Update. There's a rumor going around that the marriage between Amber O'Neal and Doc Gallows is on the rocks because of Dana Brooks' involvement with the club. And one thing I can say to that is the same thing Sheldon Cooper would say. Bitches be crazy. Number 5 story of the week is that Bo Dallas was drunk on a plane. Yeah, that sounds like a good combination of ideas there, doesn't it? Now, it's no secret that plenty of people like to have a little bit of a cocktail before they get onto a plane. Helps them loosen up, helps them to enjoy the flight a little bit more, take care of that anxiety or whatever you might be feeling. But apparently Bo had had enough to where he was noticeably intoxicated, and he was still allowed to board the plane. Whatever. That's one of those things where it's kind of the call of the airline. But once he got on the plane, it was noticed that he was a little bit belligerent, and apparently he was asked to leave. The pilots wound up escorting him off of the plane, and when he got off, there were some, apparently from what we've been reading online, some other members of the WWE staff that were there waiting in the same terminal. One of them apparently was none other than Seth Rollins. And it looks as though the story goes that Rollins tried to be something of I won't say a caretaker, but he tried to in some way diffuse the situation, and it wound up going a little bit worse for all parties involved, because from what we were reading, and it's just one of these odd things where it seemed as though there was a representative of one of the online dirt sheets there in the terminal who was able to see the whole thing happen. It came across as though Rollins was not exactly the most cheerful individual in trying to handle the situation. So you've got two things going on here. You've got Bo Dallas, who is drunk, and Rollins, who was sort of described as a Richard, for lack of a better term there. But it's just a very strange set of scenarios around the story. It's been nothing released in terms of any potential punishment that might be handed down to Dallas. Of course, he's been sort of in the middle of creative limbo anyway, with the social outcast gimmick not really going anywhere for him. The Bo Leave movement has, of course, died. Just really don't know what's up with him right now. He's one of several folks who came up from NXT and then got handed something different than what they were originally, and totally just floundered when they got to the main roster. He and Neville are two examples of that, and really feel bad for the both of them in terms of how they've been able to not progress career-wise from that move. But at the same time, this is not exactly good news for him. Never a good idea to bring this kind of thing, this kind of attention to yourself. So we'll have to wait and see what happens and see if this affects him any more than the downside of his career already has. Number 4 story of the week is that our local hero, the one and only Cedric Alexander, has wrapped up his time in North Carolina. Yes, that's true. Cedric is moving on. He's about to get paid. Looks as though he may have already gotten paid, though, because there was some stuff that showed up on his Instagram and other sites that he had just bought a new car. So apparently he's already maybe gotten his first couple of checks there from Stanford. But at any rate, Cedric did finish up his last few shows in North Carolina this past weekend. His final event was for TNT Championship Wrestling. He had a match with Chet Sterling for the PWI Ultra J Championship, and he did lose that championship to Sterling. If you don't have any knowledge of Chet Sterling, he's a very long-time member of the Mid-Atlantic roster, I started to say, but the Mid-Atlantic scene. He's a long-time member of the CWF Mid-Atlantic roster. Very talented individual who was at one point in time a tag team partner with Trevor Lee. And since then, those two have, of course, developed careers that went in different directions. But be that as it may, we're talking about Cedric here. He will, of course, be moving on to Orlando, Florida, where he'll be reporting to the WWE Performance Center to get some additional training and some prep for the WWE Cruiserweight division that'll be debuting on Monday Night Raw here in a number of weeks. Looking really forward to seeing what they do with him and to what the future holds with him as a member of the WWE roster. Of course, the growing idea here is that he'll be featured with the rest of the cruiserweights on Raw. That brand really needs something to diversify itself at this point in time. Really needs something to give it a shot in the arm as far as some differing action, and really to beef up and spice up the program, because it's 3 hours right now, and I know that for myself, sometimes that 3-hour period is just a little bit much, because it feels almost like you could chop out a good 45 minutes of it and still wind up with a very similar program. But at any rate, He'll be moving on to the WWE. Want to wish him the best of luck in that endeavor, and definitely already know that he will be changing the world and setting the world on fire as only he can. Number 3 story of the week is, could Dixie Carter be gone from TNA Wrestling entirely? That's a possibility. There's also a possibility I could walk out and be hit by a truck as soon as I step foot on the road, but hopefully that won't happen. At least not before I can post this video anyway. The story goes that there is a possibility that Dixie has now been somewhat removed from power entirely in TNA. How that has come across is just by virtue of the fact that she no longer has a controlling stake in the company. Her stake appears to have been acquired by other individuals. She, of course, had been given a sort of a figurehead title after Billy Corgan had been named president of the company in the past couple of weeks. She was being touted as the chief strategy officer and chairman of TNA Wrestling. I don't exactly know what either of those job titles would involve, to be honest with you. There's a possibility that nobody really understands what those are involving, because the fact that it's not something you really ever hear of in terms of corporate structure, at least not that I've ever heard of anyway. But this is a move and a potentiality that a lot of people have kind of been looking forward to, because they've said for a long time that in order for TNA to really succeed in the future, she can't be there. And it's somewhat unfortunate to say that, because she's been there for better than a decade now. But at the same time, it's one of those things where it's baggage hanging over the company, much like the TNA name itself. I think as you continue to see the situation evolve, not only is she going to be gone, but I think they're going to change away from TNA as well. So the next step in the evolution of this company, right here before our very eyes, as it appears that Dixie Carter is no longer with TNA. Number 2 story of the week this week is that Ryback walked away from what? Yeah, this is kind of a crazy scenario in that Ryback has begun to talk about his last couple of weeks and months with WWE, and has been very revealing, at least if he's being honest anyway, about not only the contract that he walked away from, but also some of the situations that he was facing in terms of trying to better himself as a performer and as a career veteran with the company. He has been taking a number of radio interviews here recently, and the statements that we're pulling this story from did come from a radio interview. He's had a number, and I'm referring to notes here, he's made a number of interesting comments and claims. He did say that the contract he walked away from was for 3 years, $1.5 million. That's a lot for a wrestler of his caliber to walk away from. I'll go ahead and say 3 years is not that great of a length of time, but $1.5 million, plus I'm sure there were other incentives involved in the package there as well, is a lot of money. That's not a small amount of change for anyone, especially someone like him who I don't think most people would consider to be that big to draw long term. But that was the term of the contract that he walked away from, that he apparently had some issues with in terms of some considerations that were not there for travel and whatnot. He did complain about the fact that travel expenses were something that he was having to deal with. I can somewhat understand that, but at the same time, you have a lot of these guys who will purchase their own RVs and whatnot to travel in. That might have been an option for him, but it's one of those things where we just won't ever know, more than likely. He also said in the same interview that he felt as though he had been lied to by not only Vince McMahon, but other members of WWE management. He was told at one point in time by McMahon that he would be the top heel in the company if he followed the scripted promos exactly as they were given to him. Oh boy. Anybody who's seen Ryback in front of the camera can know how scary that would be, period. But also the fact that he would follow a scripted promo, that comes off even worse. I've said for the longest time that Ryback was one of those guys that back in the 80s you would have put a mask on him or painted his face and given him a manager and he'd have been perfectly fine. But trying to have him out there doing it by himself just doesn't work, unless it's going to be like the old Skip Sheffield corn-fed meathead stuff where he's just a lunatic, and then that's something that could work for him as well. But Ryback, the big guy, whatever, that went nowhere in my opinion. But maybe the most outlandish thing that he said was the original plan for him going into WrestleMania 32 was for him to squash AJ Styles. Okay, here here again, this is not, us being a fanboy or whatnot of AJ Styles. This is just talking about the concept of what he described there. Okay, a squash match where he lays out AJ Styles. Okay, at WrestleMania 32. Bear in mind what time that was in terms of when things were happening. You had AJ just coming into the company. Yeah, whatever. So you got this situation with Ryback happening here. Is it true? Is he deemed 100% genuine with this type of information? Nobody knows but him. But it's one of these deals to where it's ironic that he's having these complaints about having been handled by WWE in a way that he felt was, you might as well go ahead and say, unprofessional. In light of the fact that he's had such issues with someone like CM Punk, who, of course, left the company under similar circumstances. It's very, peculiar how the wheel turns sometimes. But Ryback is, of course, appearing on the independent scene now. He will be at WrestleCade in November up in Winston-Salem. So if you're a Ryback fan and you want to come check him out, there's an opportunity for you there. But at the rate that he's offering, the rate that he's taking offers for independent appearances, which apparently is $45,000 a pop or somewhere in that area. Yeah, I think he's going to make his $1.5 million there in some way, some form, somehow. So, yeah, just a matter of when, I guess. And the number one story of the week this week is that Kevin Owens is your new WWE Universal Champion. This was a match that happened on the main event portion of the Monday Night Raw program this past week. This was a fantastic match, I'll go ahead and say, from top to bottom. They had the combination of players involved there who were, I will say, definitely all worthy of inclusion. Some people will say, it's a little bit early to go ahead and pull the trigger on Big Cass being in there, but it's one of those things to where a guy gets an opportunity and he's either got to run with it or just see what happens. But all four of them did very well. The story as they progressed through the whole thing there, of course, wound up being tied to the fact that the match was changed to a no disqualification scenario. And that, of course, led into the opportunity for Triple H to become involved. I think a lot of people were expecting it to sort of wind up to where he would assist Seth Rollins because of their previous relationship. But it looks as though the torch has indeed been passed away from Seth Rollins as being the authority's chosen figure or whatnot, or at least maybe just Triple H's chosen figure, because it looks as though what he did was independent of Foley and Stephanie McMahon there. It could be something to where they tie it back to potentially, the whole NXT thing to where he's now in support of his guys and his kids, whatever you want to call them, the people that have come up from NXT. Of course, that would include Rollins, but the fact of the matter is that they have history enough in the program that they've done up to this point in time to where he could say, you know what, we gave you your shot, you had your opportunity, yada, yada, yada. It's now his turn. I think that leads into, of course, the potential for a match leading way on down the road at WrestleMania 33 between Triple H and Seth Rollins. That's the level of booking we're dealing with here now. Something that's that far off. Of course, people have already made the joke, well, if they do that, then Rollins is just going to wind up hurting Triple H. That's just what he does. You can't help but make the joke sometimes, though, even though it's as childish as it is. But we'll have to see where this goes. For sure, definitely want to congratulate Owens for the fact that he is one of these guys who nobody really thought would ever progress to the point that he is. A couple of years ago when we saw him up in Winston-Salem performing there with PWX, and to think that that guy who we saw there is now the top dog in WWE and really in the entire world of professional wrestling, it's amazing. It just really, really, really is a credit to his character, to his work ethic, and to the amount of effort that he's put into being where he is in his career. That just proof, yet again, that in this era of professional wrestling, it doesn't seem to matter anymore what you look like. So long as you're able to put your work rate out there and to be an effective character, sky's the limit apparently for you. And that's great, because that's a scenario where the cream will in fact rise to the top. You'll have the best in the world performing on a very high level in a very short order, I believe, here in WWE. So it's great things all around as far as that's concerned there. Another situation where great things are all around is, of course, this coming weekend and the events that we've got to look forward to. There are 9 that we're aware of, and they're all around the area as well. They're not just scattered in, mostly North Carolina or South Carolina or Georgia. There's some happening in every state that we tend to cover. So let's go ahead and roll those posters for you, and we will be back in a few moments to close out the show. There you have it, folks, our coverage of the events coming your way this weekend. If you're a wrestler, a promoter, or in some way involved with a wrestling promotion, and you didn't see your poster in that part of the show, it's because of the fact that we didn't know about it. We try our best to keep abreast of what's going on in this part of the world by paying attention to social media, but we do miss things. That said, if you would send us your information via YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, or any other available channel that we have out there, go ahead and send us a line. We'll be glad to get your information on the Facebook page and also here on the midweek update. That'll be a great thing for you because we are all about promoting the local talent and the promotions that exist in this part of the world. Before we head out, we do want to wish our condolences to the family of Harry Fujiwara, otherwise known as the one and only Mr. Fuji, who Mr. Fuji did pass away earlier this week at the ripe age of 82 years old. Mr. Fuji was one of those guys who was a definite big part of my childhood as a wrestling fan. He was a wrestler himself, a mouthpiece for a number of top talents. I, of course, will always remember him for being associated with Yokozuna, but it was really one of those things where every time you knew him, or every time you saw him, you knew he was going to be involved with the match in some way, shape, or form, and he was a fantastic performer, and of course someone who added so much to the various performers that he was associated with. So do wish the condolences to his family and friends, of course. But we also want to thank you guys for tuning in to the program. Appreciate you watching the show and for giving us your consideration and time. If you enjoy what you see here, go ahead and click the like button. And if you really enjoy what you see here on the program and on the channel as a whole, go ahead and click that subscribe button. That way you'll be the first to know when we've uploaded something new, like a match video, highlight clip, or even maybe a new midweek update. Appreciate you guys tuning in. We'll see you next week.